A kid in my class offered me $50 to be at his birthday party. At 6 p.m., everyone started running for their lives. Jordan from my English class slipped me $50 in the hallway. Come to my birthday party Saturday. But you have to leave by 6:15. My dad gets home from the casino at 6:30. His voice cracked. If he finds anyone in the house, he'll kill me. I needed money. So Saturday at 4 p.m., I knocked on their door. Jordan answered, already shaking. Remember, 6:15. Not a minute later, his mom appeared behind him, skeletal thin from cancer, silk scarf hiding her baldness. Jordan's friend. How wonderful. She hugged me with arms like bird bones. I felt the bruises on her wrists through her sleeves. Come in before Tom. Jordan cut her off. The living room had 15 teenagers sitting rigid like we were in detention. When Jordan's mom went to the kitchen, a girl whispered, $50? Everyone nodded. We were all hired from different schools. I went to the bathroom. The house was completely empty except the party room. No furniture anywhere. Every penny was going to her treatment. Jordan kept checking his phone. 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:15. Each time his hands shook harder. His mom brought out a cake, tears streaming. I haven't seen Jordan with friends in 3 years. Not since Tom got promoted to floor security. He counts every dollar in this house. She unconsciously touched her bruised wrist. He gives Jordan $300 each week to bet his lucky numbers at the casino while he works. Says teenagers on the floor bring luck. Jordan went white. His mom noticed. Jordan, you didn't touch the casino money? We all understood. Jordan had stolen his father's gambling money to hire us. 5:30. Jordan started pacing. He gets off at 6, 20-minute drive, 15 if there's no traffic. 5:45. Jordan was cleaning obsessively. Maybe if it's perfect, he won't. He couldn't finish. His mom tried to help, but nearly fainted. Baby, we should clean. You know how he gets about messes. And the money, please tell me. 6 o'clock. Jordan's phone buzzed. He read the text, and his legs buckled. He's leaving early. His supervisor let him go. His mom collapsed into a chair, sobbing. One happy day isn't worth what he'll do. Everyone out. NOW. Jordan was shoving us toward the back door. Please, just go. 6:10. Headlights swept the driveway. Go, go, go! Jordan pushed us into the backyard. We scattered in every direction. 8 of us hopped the fence immediately. But I looked back through the kitchen window. Tom walked in. 6'3" in his casino security uniform, scanning everything. The cake, the decorations. His wife trying to smile. Where's my money, Jordan? Dad, please, I can explain. Where? ISMY money? Jordan's mom tried to stand. Tom, it's his birthday. Sit down. His voice was ice. Jordan, I'm asking one more time. I used it. For the party. For Mom. Tom grabbed Jordan by the collar and dragged him into the hallway where his mom couldn't see. Thump. The sound echoed through the walls. Jordan's mom screamed. $300 for strangers to pretend to like you? Another thump. I was frozen at the window recording on my phone as Tom's voice got louder. You think you can steal from me? After everything I do for this family? Jordan's mom was sobbing, begging Tom to stop. But the sounds from the hallway kept coming. Thump, thump. The girl who'd been sitting next to me grabbed my arm. We have to go. But I couldn't move. Through the window, I watched Jordan's mom try to crawl toward the hallway before collapsing. Tom reappeared, adjusting his uniform. Jordan wasn't with him. Clean this up, Tom said to his wife. And find my money. That's when I saw Jordan drag himself back into view, blood running from his nose, holding his ribs. His mom reached for him, but Tom stepped between them. You want friends so bad? Tom picked up the birthday cake and threw it against the wall. There's your party. Jordan looked straight at me through the window. Our eyes met for 1 second before he mouthed the word, run. I ran. We all ran. But I had it all on video. The next morning, Jordan wasn't at school. He wasn't there the next day either. When I finally worked up the courage to check, his desk had been cleared out. The teacher said he'd been withdrawn for family reasons. But after what I saw, I knew the truth would tell a different story. That night, I tracked down his neighbor's Facebook page. She had a kid who was my age, so I felt safe messaging her. Where did Jordan go? What happened to him? She replied instantly, and her text almost made me faint. The message read, Jordan and his mom are staying with her sister 2 towns over. Tom's been arrested for assault. The police came 3 days after the party. Someone reported it. My hands started shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. Someone else had called it in. Someone braver than me had already done what I should have done that night instead of running away like a coward. I sat on my bed staring at those words for what felt like forever, maybe 20 minutes, just reading them over and over. Part of me felt this huge relief washing through my whole body because Jordan and his mom got out. They were safe. Tom couldn't hurt them anymore. But mixed with that relief was this sick guilt that twisted in my stomach. I had frozen. I had watched through that window, recorded everything on my phone, and then ran. While I was busy being too scared to do anything, someone else had picked up their phone and called 911. Someone else had the guts I didn't have. I kept thinking about Jordan's face through that window, the blood running from his nose, the way he could barely stand up while holding his ribs. He had mouthed, "Run," to protect me, and I had run, but I hadn't protected him back, not when it mattered, not right away when he needed help the most. I finally put my phone down and tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop seeing his face, couldn't stop hearing those sounds. The next morning at the school, I felt like I was walking through fog. My English teacher was talking about something, maybe a book we were reading, but the words just floated past me without sticking. I kept seeing Jordan's empty desk in the corner. The teacher had said he withdrew for family reasons, but now I knew what that really meant. It meant his dad had beaten him so badly that someone called the cops. It meant he was hiding 2 towns away because coming back here wasn't safe. During the lesson, I caught myself staring at that empty desk, remembering how Jordan always sat there looking nervous, always checking his phone, always seeming like he was waiting for something bad to happen. My teacher noticed me zoning out and called my name twice before I heard her. She asked if I was okay, and I just nodded and said I was fine, even though fine was pretty much the opposite of what I was. She gave me this look like she didn't believe me, but she didn't push it, just went back to teaching. Lunchtime came and I grabbed my tray and headed to my usual spot. That's when I saw her. Natalie Hampton was sitting alone at a table near the windows. I recognized her immediately as the girl who had grabbed my arm that night, the one who said we had to go. She went to a different school, so seeing her here was weird until I remembered it was some kind of teacher work day at her school. Our eyes met across the cafeteria and I saw her whole body tense up. She looked away fast, super fast, like she didn't want to acknowledge that we both knew what we knew. I understood. Talking about it would make it real again, would bring back all those sounds and images we were both trying to forget. I didn't go over to her. She clearly didn't want to talk about it, and honestly, neither did I. Instead, I sat down and picked at my food without really eating anything. The afternoon dragged by, and when I finally got home, I went straight to my room and opened my laptop. I started searching stuff about domestic violence cases, what happens after someone gets arrested. The more I read, the more my stomach hurt. Arrests don't always mean charges. Victims take back their statements all the time because they're scared. Abusers get released and go right back home. The system was way messier than I thought, way less protective. I read about cases where guys got arrested and were back home within days. I read about women who testified against their husbands, and then the charges got dropped anyway. I read about kids who reported their parents and ended up in worse situations. Nothing was guaranteed. Tom being arrested didn't mean Jordan and his mom were actually safe forever. It just meant they were safe right now, today, and maybe tomorrow, but who knew about next week or next month? That evening, I heard the front door open downstairs, and my sister Kaya's voice calling out that she was home. I hadn't known she was coming back from college. It wasn't a holiday or anything. I heard her talking to my parents in the kitchen, and then her footsteps coming up the stairs. She knocked on my door and came in without waiting for an answer, which was totally normal for Kaya. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. I've always been good at hiding stuff from my parents, at putting on the right face and saying the right things, but Kaya sees through all of that. She sat down on my bed and asked what happened. I tried to say nothing, but my voice cracked, and suddenly I was breaking down, telling her everything. The $50 Jordan gave me to come to his party. The empty house with no furniture because all their money went to his mom's cancer treatment. How scared Jordan was, checking his phone every few minutes. His dad coming home early. The sounds from the hallway. Jordan's mom trying to crawl toward her son. The blood. All of it came pouring out and I couldn't stop. Kaya just listened without saying anything. Didn't judge me for taking money to fake being someone's friend. Didn't interrupt. When I got to the part about the video on my phone, she asked to see it. I pulled up the file and handed her my phone. Her face went completely white watching it, all the color just draining away. She watched Tom drag Jordan into that hallway, heard the sounds, saw Jordan come back bleeding. When it ended, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I needed to give this video to the police." She said it could be important evidence if Tom tried to claim the arrest was a mistake, or if Jordan's mom got too scared to tell the truth in court. I argued that someone already reported it, that the police already arrested Tom, so maybe my video didn't matter anymore. Maybe it was too late to make a difference. Kaya shook her head and explained that seeing something happen and having video proof are completely different things. A neighbor calling 911 about screaming could mean anything, but this video showed Tom's face clearly. It showed the violence, showed Jordan's injuries, showed his mom collapsing. It was proof that nobody could argue with or explain away. My stomach twisted knowing she was right, but also knowing what giving that video to the police would mean. We sat there for 2 hours talking through everything I was scared of. What if Tom found out who I was? What if I had to stand up in court and testify with Tom staring at me? What if my parents found out I took money to go to a stranger's party? Kaya went through each fear one by one, really listening and then giving me practical answers. She said Tom would probably be focused on his own legal problems, not tracking down some kid who gave evidence. She said if I had to testify, she would be there with me. She said my parents would understand once they knew the whole story. But the thing that really got through to me was when she said that staying silent would eat at me forever, that I would always wonder if speaking up could have helped Jordan and his mom stay safe. She reminded me that Jordan had mouthed "run" to protect me, and now I had a chance to protect him back. The next day after school, I texted Kaya, and she picked me up in her old Honda. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I got in the car. She looked at me and asked if I was ready, and I nodded, even though I felt like throwing up. We drove toward the police station, and I kept staring at my phone, at that video file sitting there like proof of something horrible. Halfway there, my breathing got weird and fast, and Kaya pulled over into a gas station parking lot. She turned off the car and just sat there with me while I tried to calm down. She said I didn't have to do this if I wasn't ready, that we could turn around right now. But then she reminded me that Jordan had looked right at me through that window and told me to run, that he was trying to protect me even while his dad was beating him. She said now I could protect him back. That made something click in my head, and I told her to keep driving. We pulled over one more time about 3 blocks from the station because I thought I might actually be sick, but I wasn't. Kaya held my hand for a minute and told me I was doing something really brave. Then we drove the rest of the way and parked in the visitor lot. The police station was this big brick building that looked kind of old and run down. Inside, it smelled like coffee and cleaning stuff, and there were people sitting in plastic chairs in the waiting area. Kaya walked up to the front desk with me and told the officer there that I had information about a case. The officer asked which case, and I said Tom's name and the address where it happened. He made a phone call and told us to wait. We sat in those plastic chairs for maybe 15 minutes, and I kept bouncing my leg up and down until Kaya put her hand on my knee to make me stop. Finally, this detective came out to get us. He said his name was Detective Dane Jefferson and shook both our hands. He was maybe in his 40s with gray in his hair and these eyes that looked really tired, like he'd seen too much bad stuff. He led us down a hallway to this small room with just a table and some chairs. It had cameras in the corners, and everything felt really serious and official. We all sat down, and he asked me why I was there. I explained that I was at Jordan's house the night his dad came home and heard him. Detective Jefferson leaned forward right away, and his whole body language changed. He asked if I really saw what happened, and I said yes, and that I had video of it. His eyes got really focused and intense when I said that. He asked to see the video, so I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and found the file. I handed him my phone and he pressed play. I watched his face while he watched the video. His jaw got tight, and his mouth became this thin line. When it ended, he didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he played it again from the beginning. The second time through, I could see his hands gripping the edge of the table. When it finished, he set my phone down carefully and looked at me. He started asking really specific questions about what time this happened, what the exact address was, how I came to be there in the first place. I felt my face get hot when I had to admit that Jordan paid me $50 to come to his party. I expected Detective Jefferson to judge me for that or say something about it, but he just nodded and wrote it down in his notebook. He asked how many other people were there, and I told him about 15 kids, all from different schools. He asked if I knew any of their names, and I only knew Natalie's. He wrote that down too. Then he asked me to walk him through the whole evening step by step, from when I arrived until when I left. I told him about Jordan's mom with her scarf covering her bald head, about the empty house with no furniture, about Jordan checking his phone every 15 minutes and getting more and more scared. I told him about the text that said Tom was leaving work early and how Jordan started pushing everyone out the back door. I described watching through the kitchen window and seeing Tom drag Jordan into the hallway, hearing the sounds, seeing Jordan come back with blood on his face. Detective Jefferson kept taking notes the whole time and asking follow-up questions about specific details. When I finished talking, he put his pen down and looked at me seriously. He said that Tom had been arrested based on a 911 call from a neighbor who heard screaming and called it in. But Tom told the officers who showed up that it was just a loud argument that got out of hand. He claimed Jordan's injuries came from roughhousing and horseplay that went too far. The detective said without clear evidence of what actually happened, the prosecutor was thinking about dropping the charges down to just a misdemeanor. That made my stomach drop because a misdemeanor sounded like nothing, like a parking ticket or something. But then Detective Jefferson tapped my phone on the table and said my video changed everything. He said this was clear evidence of felony assault, maybe even child endangerment since Jordan was a minor. He said it gave them real leverage to keep Tom away from the family and build a serious case. He asked if he could make a copy of the video file, and I said yes immediately. He promised they would try to protect my identity as much as they legally could, but he was honest that there were limits to that. Kaya spoke up then and asked about witness protection or restraining orders for me, since Tom might want to come after whoever gave the police this evidence. Detective Jefferson was really straight with us. He said Tom would probably find out eventually who provided the video if the case went to trial, and I had to testify. But he also said that by the time Tom knew, he would be dealing with his own legal problems and court dates, and probably wouldn't have time or energy to track down a witness. It wasn't a perfect guarantee of safety, but it was realistic and honest, which I appreciated more than if he'd just tried to make me feel better with lies. We ended up spending 90 minutes at that police station. Detective Jefferson took my phone to another room to copy the video file onto their system. While he was gone, this woman came in and introduced herself as a victim advocate. She explained what might happen next with the case, how long things could take, whether I might have to testify in court. She talked really slowly and made sure I understood everything. The whole process was exhausting and made everything feel terrifyingly real in a way it hadn't before. When Detective Jefferson came back with my phone, he had me sign some papers and give a formal statement that he recorded. He asked me the same questions again, but this time officially for the record. My voice sounded weird and small on the recording when he played a bit of it back to make sure it worked. Finally, we were done, and he walked us back out to the lobby. He shook my hand again and told me I did a brave thing coming forward. He said this video could make all the difference for Jordan and his mom. On the drive home, Kaya and I didn't talk much at first. I felt completely drained, like all my energy had leaked out during that interview. About halfway home, Kaya said we shouldn't tell our parents yet. She said they would freak out about the danger and might even try to make me take back my statement or refuse to testify. I agreed immediately because I knew she was right. We decided to wait until the legal stuff was more settled, and we absolutely had to tell them. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept going back and forth between feeling proud that I did the right thing and being terrified about what might happen because of it. Every time I heard a car outside, I jumped up and looked out my window to make sure it wasn't Tom somehow coming to find me. I kept my phone right next to my bed and checked that all the doors were locked 3 separate times before I finally tried to sleep. Even then, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, playing through different scenarios in my head. What if Tom got out on bail and came looking for me? What if he found out where I lived? What if I had to see him in court and he stared at me the whole time? My brain wouldn't shut off. 2 days later, I was in English class trying to focus on some essay we were supposed to be writing when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I wasn't supposed to have it out during class, but I snuck a look and saw it was Detective Jefferson calling. My heart started racing and I raised my hand to ask if I could go to the bathroom. In the hallway, I called him back with shaking hands. He told me the prosecutor had reviewed my video evidence and upgraded the charges against Tom to felony assault and child endangerment. He said Tom's bail had been increased to an amount he probably couldn't pay, and he was required to stay away from Jordan and his mother. There was a restraining order in place now. I felt this huge wave of relief wash over me. Detective Jefferson said my video made this possible, that without it, Tom probably would have walked away with barely any consequences. He thanked me again for having the courage to come forward. After I hung up, I just stood in that hallway for a minute, trying to process what he'd told me. The charges were serious now. Tom was being held on higher bail. Jordan and his mom had legal protection. I had actually helped make that happen. For the first time since that night at the party, I felt like maybe I'd done something that actually mattered. Detective Jefferson kept talking on the other end of the line. He told me Jordan's mom was working with them now, giving a complete statement about everything that happened over the years. Apparently my video gave her the push she needed to finally speak up about all of it. Knowing someone else saw what Tom did made her realize she wasn't making it up or being dramatic. I felt this weird mix of relief and guilt wash over me. Relief that I actually helped them somehow. Guilt that it took a stranger's video for her to feel brave enough to tell the truth. After I hung up, I just sat on my bed staring at my phone for a while. The next day at the school, I couldn't stop thinking about the call. I kept spacing out during classes, seeing Jordan's face through that window over and over. My teachers noticed, but nobody said anything. At lunch, I grabbed my tray and headed to my usual spot in the corner. That's when I saw Natalie Hampton standing near the vending machines. She was from a different school, but I recognized her immediately as the girl who grabbed my arm that night telling me we had to leave. Our eyes met across the cafeteria. She looked away fast like she didn't want to acknowledge what we both knew. I sat down and tried to eat, but my stomach felt tight. A few minutes later, she walked over to my table. She stood there holding her lunch tray, not quite sitting down yet. She asked quietly if I'd heard anything about Jordan. I nodded and said yeah, he was staying with family in another town. She bit her lip and whispered that she'd been having bad dreams about that night. She said she felt terrible for not doing anything to help. I told her there wasn't anything we could have done in that moment. She sat down across from me, and her hands were shaking a little. I looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then I told her I gave video evidence to the police. Her eyes went huge. She stared at me for a second with this look that was half scared and half impressed. She admitted she took photos at the party on her phone, but deleted them all the next day. She said she was trying to pretend the whole thing never happened. Now she wished she'd been braver like me. I didn't feel brave, though. I felt like I should have called 911 right away instead of running. We ended up ditching the cafeteria and finding an empty classroom to talk. We sat in the back corner and she told me her family was broke too. That's why she took Jordan's $50. She said she felt sick about it even before everything went wrong, knowing she was getting paid to fake being someone's friend. I told her I felt the exact same way. We both took money from a kid who was desperate enough to steal from his abusive dad just to have people at his birthday party. That guilt sat heavy between us. We talked for almost 20 minutes about how messed up the whole situation was. Neither of us had told our real friends about it because how do you explain that you got paid to attend a stranger's party and then watched him get beaten up? By the time the bell rang, we both felt a little less alone with it. Over the next week, I became super aware of everything around me. I checked over my shoulder constantly in the hallways. At home, I kept looking out the window to see if any unfamiliar cars were parked on our street. Every time I heard footsteps behind me, I'd turn around to make sure it wasn't Tom somehow. I knew he was in jail, but my brain wouldn't stop imagining him getting out and coming to find me. Kaya called one night and I told her how jumpy I was. She said this kind of fear was normal after seeing violence happen. That didn't make it easier to deal with, though. I was exhausted from being on edge all the time. I couldn't focus on homework. I barely slept. My parents asked if I was feeling okay, and I lied and said I was just stressed about school. After English class one day, my teacher asked me to stay back for a minute. Once everyone else left, she said she wanted to check if everything was all right with me. She mentioned that Jordan's situation had affected several students who knew him. She told me the school counselor was available if anyone needed someone to talk to. The way she said it made it clear she was offering help without forcing me to explain anything. I thanked her and said I'd think about it. That weekend, I looked up the school counselor online. His name was Ridge Callahan, and he looked younger than I expected, maybe early 30s. On Monday, I went to the office and asked if I could schedule an appointment with him. The secretary gave me a pass for Wednesday during study hall. When I walked into his office, it felt less scary than I thought it would. The walls were painted light blue instead of that awful beige color most school offices had. He had some plants on the windowsill and a couple of comfortable chairs instead of the hard plastic ones. He shook my hand and told me to sit wherever I felt comfortable. I picked the chair furthest from the door. He asked what brought me in, and I gave him a careful version of the truth. I said I witnessed something bad happen to someone I knew, and I reported it to the police. Now I was having trouble dealing with what I saw. He nodded and didn't push me for details I wasn't ready to share. Instead, he started talking about how witnessing violence affects people. He explained that even if you're not the one getting hurt, seeing it happen does something to your brain. He said the guilt I was feeling about not doing more was super common. He told me it actually took a lot of courage to come forward and report what I saw, even though I was scared. Hearing him say that helped somehow. He taught me this breathing exercise for when I started to panic. He said to breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and repeat until my heart stopped racing. He explained that my constant checking and fear of being followed was called being on high alert. It was my brain's way of trying to protect me after seeing something dangerous. He said it wasn't a weakness or me being dramatic. It was a normal response to trauma. Knowing there was an actual name for what I was experiencing made me feel less crazy. Before I left, he asked if I wanted to schedule another appointment for next week. I said yes. 2 weeks after I gave my statement to Detective Jefferson, my phone rang during math class. I snuck a look and saw it was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. I asked to use the bathroom and called back from the hallway. A woman answered and said she was calling from the prosecutor's office. They wanted to meet with me to prepare in case I had to testify at trial. My stomach dropped hearing those words. She asked when I could come in, and I told her I'd need to check with my family. As soon as I got home, I called Kaya. She said there was no way I was going to that meeting alone, and she'd drive up to take me. Kaya picked me up Thursday afternoon, and we drove to the courthouse downtown. The building looked huge and official with its stone columns and metal detectors at the entrance. Security made us empty our pockets and walk through the scanner. My hands shook, putting my phone in the plastic bin. Kaya squeezed my shoulder as we waited in the lobby. A woman in a navy suit approached us holding a folder. She looked about 50 with gray streaks in her dark hair pulled back in a bun. She shook both our hands firmly. Her name was Sarah Anderson, and she worked as a prosecutor for the county. She led us down a hallway to a small conference room with a table and 4 chairs. The walls were that beige color that all government buildings seem to have. Sarah sat across from us and opened her folder. She explained that she handled domestic violence cases and had been assigned to Tom's case after Detective Jefferson submitted the evidence. Her voice was calm but direct. She said Tom's defense lawyer had seen my video and the photos from Jordan's hospital visit. They were pushing hard for a plea deal now because they knew the evidence was strong. Sarah looked at me and asked if I would be willing to testify at trial if the case went that far. My mouth went dry. I managed to say that I was scared, but I would do it if I had to. Sarah nodded and wrote something in her notes. She explained that most domestic violence cases never actually reach trial. Defense lawyers negotiate plea deals to avoid the risk of losing at trial, but my willingness to testify made their position much stronger during negotiations. If Tom's lawyer knew we had a witness ready to take the stand and describe what they saw, they would push their client harder to accept a deal. Sarah pulled out a manila envelope from her folder. She warned me that what she was about to show me would be difficult to see. Then she spread out 4 photos across the table. They were medical photos from the hospital. Jordan's face was swollen and bruised in shades of purple and yellow. His left eye was almost swollen shut. Another photo showed his bare chest with dark bruises across his ribs where Tom had hit him. A close-up showed the broken skin on his nose where blood had dried. The last photo documented the back of his head where he had a concussion from hitting the wall. I stared at the images and felt like I couldn't breathe. Seeing it documented like this with medical labels and measurements made it real in a way that was different from watching it happen through the window. These were official records proving that what I witnessed actually hurt Jordan badly. My vision started to blur, and I realized I was crying. I stood up fast and mumbled something about needing the bathroom. Sarah pointed down the hall. I practically ran out of the conference room. The courthouse bathroom was empty and cold. I went into a stall and locked the door. Then I completely broke down. I sobbed so hard my whole body shook. I kept seeing those photos in my mind. The purple bruises, the swollen face, the medical measurements documenting every injury. This was what Tom had done to his own son over $300. I heard the bathroom door open. Kaya called my name softly. I unlocked the stall and she pulled me into a hug. She held me while I cried into her shoulder. She said I was doing something incredibly brave and important. She reminded me that Jordan and his mom were safer now because I had spoken up and given the police evidence they needed. She said most people would have just deleted the video and tried to forget about it. But I chose to help, even though it was scary. After a few minutes, I managed to stop crying enough to wash my face at the sink. My eyes were red and puffy. Kaya helped me dry my face with paper towels. She asked if I was ready to go back or if I needed more time. I took a deep breath and said I was ready. We walked back to the conference room together. Sarah was still sitting there waiting patiently. She didn't comment on my red eyes. She just asked if I was okay to continue. I nodded and sat back down. Sarah explained that Jordan's mom was also willing to testify now. She had given a full statement about years of abuse. She described how Tom controlled all the money and got angry when things weren't perfect. She talked about the bruises I had seen on her wrists, and worse ones that I hadn't seen. The combination of her testimony about the pattern of abuse, plus my video showing a specific violent incident, created a very strong case. Sarah said Tom's lawyer knew they couldn't win at trial with this much evidence, so they were negotiating for reduced charges in exchange for Tom pleading guilty. That way, Jordan's mom wouldn't have to testify in court and relive everything in front of Tom, and I probably wouldn't have to testify either. But having us both ready and willing to testify gave Sarah leverage to demand a better plea deal. She thanked us for coming in and said she would call me when she had news about the negotiations. The meeting lasted about an hour total. Kaya drove me home, and I felt exhausted like I had run a marathon. Over the next 3 weeks, I tried to go back to normal life. I went to the school and did my homework and hung out with friends, but everything felt hollow and strange. I would sit in class and think about Jordan's injuries while my teacher talked about math problems. I would eat dinner with my parents and think about the plea negotiations while they asked about my day. I felt like I was carrying knowledge that separated me from everyone else's everyday concerns. My friends complained about tests and dating drama, and I couldn't make myself care. One day in the cafeteria, I saw Natalie sitting alone at a table near the windows. I grabbed my lunch tray and walked over. I asked if I could sit with her. She looked surprised, but said yes. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then she asked quietly if I had heard anything about the case. I told her about meeting with the prosecutor. She nodded and picked at her food. After that, we started eating lunch together a few times a week. We didn't talk about that night directly most days, but there was comfort in sitting with someone who understood why I kept checking my phone and jumping at loud noises. She got it without me having to explain. My appointments with Ridge continued every week. One session, he asked about the money Jordan had paid me. I admitted that I felt guilty about taking it now. I had been desperate for cash at the time, but looking back, I could see how I participated in Jordan's situation, even though I didn't know how bad things were. Ridge listened and then said something that helped. He explained that I could acknowledge my mistake without drowning in shame about it. I was a kid who needed money and took an opportunity that seemed harmless. I didn't know Jordan was abused, and when I found out I chose to help him instead of walking away. That mattered more than my initial reason for being there. One afternoon, 3 weeks after the prosecutor meeting, I got a Facebook message notification. It was from Isabella Cross. My heart started beating faster as I opened it. She wrote that Jordan's mom wanted to thank whoever had provided the video evidence to the police. The detective had told her that someone came forward with proof of what happened. She was grateful, because without that evidence, Tom might have gotten away with just a warning. Isabella asked if I would be willing to meet with them. I stared at my phone screen and felt panic rising in my chest. Meet Jordan and his mom face to face? What would I even say to them? I was the person who took money to fake being Jordan's friend. I was the person who witnessed his worst moment and then ran away. I recorded him getting beaten by his father. How could they possibly want to see me? That night I called Kaya and told her about Isabella's message. My voice kept breaking as I explained how Jordan's mom wanted to meet me. Kaya listened without interrupting. Then she said something that made me stop spiraling. She pointed out that yes, I took money to attend the party, but I also came back with evidence that helped protect them. My video might have saved Jordan's mom's life by getting Tom locked up. The $50 got me there, but what I did after the party mattered way more than why I showed up in the first place. She said my actions after witnessing the abuse defined who I was, not my initial motivation for being there. I sat on my bed holding the phone and felt something shift inside me. Maybe I wasn't just the person who took money to fake being someone's friend. Maybe I was also the person who stayed when it mattered and helped when it counted. The next 3 days were torture. I kept opening Facebook to message Isabella back, then closing it without typing anything. I would start writing a response, then delete it and put my phone down. What would I even say to Jordan's mom? How do you face someone whose worst moment you recorded on video? But Kaya's words kept running through my head. My actions after the party mattered more. I had evidence that helped them. On the 3rd day, I finally typed out a message to Isabella. I said I would be willing to meet. My hands shook, hitting send. Isabella replied within an hour. She suggested a coffee shop in the town where Jordan and his mom were staying with her sister. We arranged it for Saturday morning. I told Kaya about the meeting and she immediately said she would drive me there. Saturday morning came too fast. I barely slept the night before. Kaya picked me up at 9 and we drove 40 minutes to the coffee shop. My stomach felt sick the entire drive. I kept checking the time on my phone and watching the miles count down. Kaya tried to distract me by talking about college, but I couldn't focus on anything she said. We pulled into the coffee shop parking lot at exactly 10 o'clock. Through the window, I could see 2 women sitting at a corner table. One of them was Jordan's mom. She looked different from I remembered from the party. Still thin, still wearing a scarf over her head, but somehow less fragile, less like she might break apart at any second. Her sister sat next to her, a woman who looked similar but healthier, stronger. I walked into the coffee shop with Kaya right behind me. Jordan's mom saw me immediately. Her eyes filled with tears and she stood up from the table. Before I could even say hello or sit down, she crossed the space between us and hugged me. Her arms wrapped around me tight, and I felt her crying against my shoulder. I started crying too, without meaning to. Her sister stood up and put her hand on my arm. Kaya stayed back near the door, giving us space. We finally sat down at the table. Jordan's mom grabbed my hands and held them across the table. She thanked me over and over for the video. Her voice kept cracking, but she pushed through. She explained that she had been too scared to speak up for years. Tom controlled everything in their house. Every dollar, every decision, every moment of their lives. She thought maybe she was crazy, or making things worse than they were. But seeing proof that someone else witnessed what Tom did, that she wasn't exaggerating or imagining the violence, gave her the strength to tell the truth about everything. She said the detective showed her my video, and she finally understood that other people could see what she lived through every day. I tried to apologize for taking money to attend the party. The words tumbled out messy and rushed. I told her I was part of Jordan's problem, part of why he felt so alone that he had to pay people to pretend to be his friends. She waved her hand like she was brushing away my words. She said Jordan didn't blame any of the kids who came to the party. He understood they needed money too. He knew what he was doing when he hired everyone. He was just grateful that someone stayed long enough to get evidence instead of running away and forgetting about him completely. Her sister nodded and added that Jordan talked about me sometimes in therapy. He remembered that I looked back through the window when everyone else just ran. I asked where Jordan was and why he wasn't here. Jordan's mom's face got sad but understanding. She explained that he was in therapy twice a week now and didn't feel ready to meet me yet. His therapist thought seeing me might bring back too many bad memories of that night. The beating, the fear, all of it. She said Jordan needed more time to heal before he could face someone who witnessed his worst moment. I told her I understood completely. I said I would be available whenever he felt ready, or never if that was better for him. Both options were okay with me. She squeezed my hands and thanked me for understanding. Then she told me about Tom's case. His lawyer knew they couldn't win at trial with my video evidence, so they agreed to a plea deal. 3 years in state prison for felony assault, plus mandatory anger management classes and a permanent restraining order. She admitted it wasn't as much time as she wanted. She wished he would be locked up forever, but 3 years was enough time for her and Jordan to rebuild their lives without him. Enough time to move forward and feel safe. Her sister explained that she had helped them get into a domestic violence shelter program. The program provided housing assistance and job training for abuse survivors. Jordan's mom was learning computer skills so she could get an office job. Jordan's mom added that she was also getting treatment for her cancer through a program for low-income patients. The program covered most of the costs, and she didn't have to worry about Tom controlling the money anymore. She said things were still hard. Some days were really difficult, but they were moving forward instead of being trapped in that empty house with Tom's violence. Before we left the coffee shop, Jordan's mom grabbed both my hands again and looked straight into my eyes. She said I saved their lives by not deleting that video, by finding the courage to go to the police, even when I was scared. She said I gave them a chance at a real life, a safe life. I started crying again sitting at that table. All the guilt and fear and tension from the past weeks came pouring out. Kaya drove me back home, and I cried in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I could pull myself together enough to go inside. The next week at the school felt different, lighter somehow. I finally told my parents everything one night after dinner. I sat them down in the living room and explained the whole story from the beginning. The $50, the party, witnessing the beating, giving the video to police, all of it. My mom's face went white listening to me talk. My dad kept asking why I didn't come to them immediately. They were shocked and upset that I kept this secret for so long, but they were also proud that I eventually did the right thing. My dad stood up and hugged me for a long time without saying anything. My mom joined the hug, and we stood there in the living room, the three of us holding each other while I cried again. My mom pulled back from the hug and held my shoulders, looking straight at me. Her eyes were red, but her voice stayed steady when she asked what happens when Tom gets out of prison in 3 years. I told her what Detective Jefferson already explained to me. The restraining order protects Jordan and his mom, not witnesses like me, but the detective said Tom will probably be more angry at the system than at individual people who testified. It's not a promise of safety, just what usually happens in cases like this. My dad asked if we should be worried, if we should move or change our phone number. I shook my head and repeated what the detective told me. Tom doesn't know where I live or go to the school. The only connection between us was Jordan, and Jordan's gone now. My mom didn't look convinced, but she nodded and hugged me again anyway. The next week, I had my regular appointment with Ridge. I sat in his office and told him about meeting Jordan's mom at the coffee shop, about how she thanked me and said I saved their lives. Ridge asked how that made me feel, and I struggled to find the right words. Relief, I finally said. Relief that I helped them get away from Tom, but also this weird sadness for Jordan. This kid who was so desperate for friends that he stole from his violent father to hire strangers to pretend to like him for a few hours. Ridge nodded and said, "It's okay to feel both things at once. I can be glad I helped while also grieving for what Jordan went through. The two feelings don't cancel each other out." That night I couldn't sleep, so I opened my laptop and started searching. Domestic violence statistics. Warning signs of abuse. How common is family violence? The numbers made me feel sick. 1 in 4 women experience severe physical violence from a partner. Millions of kids witness violence in their homes every year. I kept reading and realized how many signs I missed with Jordan. His constant anxiety that I thought was just his personality. His complete isolation from other students. His mom's bruises that I saw but didn't really see. Didn't let myself understand what they meant. I stayed up until 2 in the morning reading article after article, learning about a problem I never knew was this big. At lunch the next day, Natalie sat down across from me and asked if I was okay. I looked tired, she said. I told her about the research, about learning how many kids like Jordan are suffering and nobody notices. Natalie picked at her food and said, "Maybe we could do something about that. Maybe we could start a group at the school for students dealing with family violence or who witnessed traumatic stuff like we did. A place where people could talk without having to explain everything." I liked the idea immediately. We spent the rest of lunch planning it out, then went to find Ridge after school. He listened to our idea and said he thought it was great. He offered to help us organize it through the counseling office, to make it official. 2 months crawled by with school and homework and the support group planning. Then one afternoon, my phone rang with a call from the courthouse. The plea deal was finalized. Tom pleaded guilty to felony assault and child endangerment. 3 years in state prison with credit for time already served, then 5 years of probation after that. Jordan's mom attended the sentencing with her sister sitting beside her for support. I didn't go to the courthouse. I couldn't handle seeing Tom in person, even with guards around. but I felt something loosen in my chest when I heard he'd be locked up for 3 years. 3 years for Jordan and his mom to build a new life without him. The next morning, Detective Jefferson called my cell phone. I recognized his number and answered fast. He told me the case was officially closed. Tom accepted the plea deal and waived his right to appeal. The detective thanked me for my courage in coming forward with the video. He said my evidence was the turning point that made everything else possible. Without it, Tom probably would have gotten away with a misdemeanor charge and gone right back home to Jordan and his mom. I asked if that really would have happened, and the detective said yes, absolutely. Domestic violence cases are hard to prosecute without solid evidence. My video changed everything. I asked Detective Jefferson if cases like Jordan's are common. He went quiet for a few seconds. Then he admitted that domestic violence is everywhere, like an epidemic, but most victims are too scared to report it. They're afraid of what will happen if they speak up, afraid nobody will believe them, afraid the abuser will get out and come back worse than before. When witnesses come forward with evidence like I did, it changes the whole situation. It gives victims courage and gives prosecutors the proof they need. He told me I should be proud of what I did, that I likely saved lives. After we hung up, I sat on my bed staring at my phone for a long time. My next counseling session with Ridge happened a few days later. We talked about how to move forward from here. I told him the hypervigilance was better but still there. I still checked locks twice before bed and jumped at unexpected sounds. Ridge explained that witnessing violence changes you permanently. It makes you aware of dangers that other people ignore or don't see. That doesn't mean I'm broken, he said. It means I'm aware of realities that many people get to avoid their whole lives. Some changes from trauma are about damage, but some are about awareness. Learning to live with that awareness is part of healing. Natalie and I launched the peer support group 2 weeks later with Ridge's help. We posted flyers around school and made an announcement during morning assembly. 6 students showed up to the first meeting in Ridge's office after school. We sat in a circle and Ridge explained the ground rules. Everything shared stays confidential. Nobody has to talk if they don't want to. We're here to support each other, not to fix each other's problems. Then he let us talk. We didn't share specific details about our situations, but we talked about living with fear, about feeling guilty for things that weren't our fault, about trying to act normal when everything feels wrong. It felt good to create something positive from something horrible. 3 months after Jordan's birthday party, I got another Facebook message from Isabella. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. The message said Jordan was doing better in therapy and wanted to write me a letter. She asked if I was okay with receiving it. I stared at the message for 5 full minutes, my heart beating fast. I didn't know what Jordan would say to me. Would he be angry that I took his money? Would he blame me for not calling the police faster? Would he hate me for witnessing his worst moment? My finger hovered over the keyboard. Finally, I typed yes and hit send before I could change my mind. The letter showed up in my mailbox a week later in a plain white envelope with my name written in careful, neat handwriting. I recognized Jordan's writing from English class assignments we'd turned in together. My hands shook opening it. The letter was 2 pages long on lined notebook paper. Jordan thanked me for staying when everyone else ran, for recording what happened, for being brave enough to give it to police. He wrote that he didn't blame me for taking the money because he knew what he was doing when he hired everyone. He understood we all needed cash, and he was the one who put us in that situation. Reading those words made my chest tight because I'd been carrying so much guilt about accepting his $50. Jordan wrote that he was starting at a new school next semester and actually making real friends this time. His mom's cancer treatment was going well at a clinic that helped low-income patients. They had a small apartment now, and his aunt helped with expenses, so his mom didn't have to work while doing chemo. He said he was still angry about what happened, and probably would be for a long time. But he was also hopeful about the future in a way he never was before. He could finally imagine a life without his dad's violence hanging over everything. The letter's ending made me start crying right there at my kitchen table. Jordan wrote that he might want to meet me someday when he was ready, but not yet. He needed more time to heal first. Then he signed it with words that broke something open in my chest. Jordan wrote his name and then added, "Your actual friend, not a paid one." I sat there crying for 10 minutes straight, feeling like maybe I did something truly good despite all my mistakes. Maybe taking that money and going to his party led to something important, even though my reasons were selfish at first. I wrote Jordan back that same night, keeping my letter short like he'd kept his brief and honest. I told him I was proud of his courage and sorry for everything he went through. I said I'd be here whenever he was ready to meet, or if he never wanted to meet at all because both were okay. I thanked him for the letter and for calling me a friend. I meant every word. Mailing that letter the next morning felt like closing one chapter and opening another. At the school, the peer support group kept growing over the next few months. We started with 6 members, and by November we had 12 regular people showing up every other week. Ridge let us use his office after school, and he sat in on meetings to make sure things stayed safe and supportive. People shared about dealing with difficult home situations, processing trauma, feeling alone with problems they couldn't tell anyone about. We didn't fix each other's problems, but we listened and reminded each other we weren't crazy or weak for struggling. Ridge told me after one meeting that he was impressed by how the group created a safe space for students dealing with tough situations. He said several members had started their own therapy because the group gave them courage to ask for help. That made me feel like Jordan's horrible birthday party led to something good for other people too. Natalie and I ran the group together, and it felt meaningful to turn our shared trauma into something that helped others. Kaya came home for Thanksgiving break in late November, and I told her about everything that happened since she helped me go to the police. We sat in her bedroom like we used to before she left for college, and I filled her in on Jordan's letter, the support group growing, how I felt different now than I did 6 months ago. Kaya listened to everything, and then said something that stuck with me. She told me I'd grown up a lot in these few months, that witnessing something terrible and choosing to act on it changed me in important ways. She said most people go through their whole lives without facing a moment that tests what they're really made of. I got tested at 16, and I came through it even though I was terrified the whole time. Sitting there with my sister, I realized she was right about how much I'd changed. I was more aware now of people around me who might be struggling or hiding pain. I noticed things I would have missed before, like when someone at the school seemed too quiet or had bruises they tried to cover up. I was less focused on my own problems and more conscious of the bigger picture. It wasn't always comfortable being this aware, because you can't unsee suffering once you know it's there. But it felt meaningful in a way my life hadn't felt before. I was paying attention now instead of just drifting through my days thinking about homework and weekend plans. Detective Jefferson called me one more time in early December to let me know that Tom had been transferred to state prison to begin serving his sentence. The restraining order was in effect, and Jordan's family had been notified of his exact location. The detective said this chapter was officially closed from a legal standpoint. Tom would be in prison for 3 years and then on probation for 5 more after that. He wouldn't be allowed anywhere near Jordan or his mom during that time. Hearing those facts made it feel real and final in a way it hadn't before. The case was done. Jordan and his mom were safe. I thanked the detective for calling and for everything he did to help them. He told me again that my video made all the difference, and I should be proud of my courage. After we hung up, I sat there feeling relieved and sad at the same time. Relieved that Tom was locked up where he couldn't hurt anyone. Sad that it took so much pain and violence to get to this point. During winter break, I started volunteering at a local domestic violence shelter 2 afternoons a week. I did basic tasks like sorting donations, answering phones, and organizing supplies in their storage room. The staff seemed surprised that a high school student wanted to volunteer there, but they were grateful for the help. Most of their volunteers were older adults or college students doing required service hours. Being there felt like honoring what Jordan and his mom survived. I met women and kids who'd escaped situations similar to theirs, and I saw how hard it was to rebuild a life after leaving an abuser. The shelter provided temporary housing and helped families find jobs and permanent apartments. I learned that leaving is often the most dangerous time because abusers get violent when they lose control. That's why places like this exist, to keep people safe during that scary transition period. Working there made me understand how lucky Jordan and his mom were that things worked out. A lot of families don't get that chance. On New Year's Eve, I stayed home instead of going to parties with friends. I sat in my room thinking about where I was 6 months ago. Back in June, I was desperate enough for money that I'd attend a stranger's party without asking questions. I was completely unaware that one night would change my entire view of courage, justice, and what it means to do the right thing, even when you're terrified. I thought about Jordan hiring 15 kids to pretend to be his friends because he was that lonely and desperate. I thought about his mom trying to make one happy memory before her husband came home. I thought about Tom's violence and how it poisoned everything in that house. And I thought about the choice I made to stay at that window and record what I saw instead of running away like everyone else. That choice led to everything that came after. Jordan and his mom getting away safely, Tom going to prison, the support group at the school helping other kids, me volunteering at the shelter. All of it connected back to that one moment when I could have run, but didn't. At midnight on New Year's Eve, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Happy New Year to the bravest person I know." I stared at the message for a minute before typing back, "Same to you." We both showed up to that party because we needed money. We both saw things we couldn't forget, but now we were both trying to be better people than we were 6 months ago. That's all anyone can do, really. Keep trying to be better than yesterday. The new semester started 2 weeks later, and I walked into school feeling different from I had in September. I wasn't just going through the motions anymore. I had a plan forming in my head about what I wanted to do after graduation. Social work, maybe, or criminal justice. Something where I could help families dealing with violence at home. Something where I could make a difference for kids like Jordan who were stuck in bad situations. That desperate birthday party taught me something important about myself. The worst moments in life show you who you really want to be. When everything goes wrong and you're scared and you have a choice between running away or staying to help, that choice matters. I want to be someone who stays, someone who pays attention when others are hurting, someone who speaks up even when it's scary, especially when it's scary, because that's when speaking up matters most.